do everything for everyone else. Let me help you make your life easier. Quick, short information to make you empowered and remind you why you are so important. Because if you don't know what's on the menu, how can you choose what's right for you? Hi, I'm Elena, Director of my private practice Supportive Therapy, an everyday Aussie mum trying not to lose my biscuits and my kids. As a mental health professional, I'm here to share my secrets so no other mother feels alone or powerless. Knowledge is power, and I want you to be powerful. Think of it like I'm your mindset coach through all of this. Everything is backed by science and psychology. I believe in you, and I want you to be the best version of yourself. To be happy and to feel in control, you need to be mentally strong. Hello everyone, my name's Elena, and today we're going to be talking about the impact on children after separation. This is going to be a bit of a difficult topic, but for those that are going through or have been through or are thinking about, or even our friends are going through, it's really interesting to understand what's going on, how our brain works, and when things aren't peaceful, amicable, or cooperative in any way, if the parents are both hurt, if there's potential mental illness in the parties, it can be very difficult to get on the same page. So this episode, we're actually going to be talking about the negative impact on children after separations when either one or two of the parents aren't cooperating, and to understand the cycles that can happen and understand from a greater perspective about what's going on and how I can regain back control over my life and with my children, and then understanding potentially the tactics that the other people are using as well. So obviously the breakdown of a relationship is heartbreaking and so difficult. And if we can't manage our own needs, sometimes how are we then able to manage our children's, which is really difficult and can obviously lead to all of that mum guilt. When we separate, we are in survival mode. No one ever voluntarily goes into a commitment with someone predicting a separation or divorce. And when this happens, it's usually we're at the end of our tether. Things haven't been well for a really long time. And for my own mental sanity and the well-being of the children, sometimes the best decision for me is to separate. We all react differently to separations, including our grief reactions. So the future can seem uncertain and we feel a loss of control and confidence. When we feel a loss of control, it makes us feel powerless, which can then create internal turmoil and chaos. So we need to make ourselves the illusion, quote unquote, that we are in control again. So, which can then present as controlling or manipulative behaviours, irrational decisions, or saying things that we don't mean. So these are negative impacts sometimes when we're in a heightened state, when we're in survival mode, when our children are threatened to be taken away from us. Sometimes we grasp at things, or even our partner will grasp at things just to get back that illusion of control back in. So if we want to understand especially negative impacts on children, some of the theories, obviously theories-based, and things to keep in mind, number one is called attachment theory disruption. So attachment theory is every child with their caregiver needs secure attachment, that I am loved, that I am your priority, that you will always have my back, and that my caregiver don't do any harm, and that you'll always be there for me. Sometimes when a separation is happening and there's turmoil, it might not be secure attachment anymore. It might be anxious avoidance, it might be ambivalent, and it might be disorganized. I'll explain about these later if you're not aware of these terms, or have a look at yourself online, or resources or books. But that's something that we're going to definitely discuss in the future more in depth. So understanding if there is a broken attachment with my caregiver, I don't feel safe, I am worried. And children, all they ever want to do is stay in the nest. They want to do the right thing. They don't want to get kicked out. So they will adapt depending on the situation. Separation can disrupt the primary attachment bond, and this can also for the child lead to anxiety, fear, and emotional distress in children. And children presented in different ways. And one of the main ways can be quote unquote bad behavior, tantrums, and it's not that they're acting out in any way, it's because of attachment theory disruption. Number 2, adjustment difficulties. So the stress and changes associated with parental separation can contribute to adjustment difficulties and behavioural problems. So this may manifest in aggression, defiance, withdrawal, so going inward, and other behavioural issues in children to struggle to cope with a new family dynamic. Children thrive in predictability and routine. They know what's happening, feel a sense of control and predictability, and they feel safe. So when everything is topsy-turvy all over the place, it can be terrifying and unnerving. Okay, number 3 is emotional and psychological trauma. Obviously, no judgment, but depending on what can happen, parental separation can be a source of emotional and psychological trauma for children, especially if it involves conflict, hostility, and violence. So especially if a mother is fleeing from a relationship that has been aggressive, violent, any of those things, coercive control. For a child witnessing intense conflicts or feeling caught in the middle in any way can potentially result in long-lasting emotional scars that can affect a child's mental health. And this is sometimes difficult for a mother to hear because really you're just in survival. If this is going or happening to you, it's very, very difficult to try and look after your children and kind of protect them the best way that you can. And obviously trauma happens to all of us. It's a scale on different levels. And realizing that after everything calms down, even though we do use the words like long-term trauma, everything can be resolved and everything can be fixed, and we can go back to a peaceful and calm normality with beautiful, secure attachment. So even though some of this is scary and overwhelming, there's always hope, and that's why we're here to be mentally strong. This is what I want to give you. Number 4 is the financial strain and socio-economic stress. And obviously in Australian society, we are women. We are generally the ones that are out of the workforce. Our superannuation is always generally less than our partners. So it can be difficult that if there was a verbal agreement in the beginning that I was going to be a stay-at-home mum, and now all of this has happened and I've been out of the workforce for a few years now, I am financially behind the 8 ball, which is then terrifying because if I'm looking after my children, trying to find a job, working part-time or with restricted hours when I haven't been doing that before, can be absolutely terrifying. The economic impact of separation, particularly if it leads to a decline in the family's financial resources, can negatively affect children. So socioeconomic stresses may result in a lower quality of life, limited access to resources, and challenges in meeting the basic needs. And so that can impact on children's overall well-being. I'm not blaming anything or anyone, but even if you do have your children full-time and you have to work full-time, it's very difficult because if you're doing really, really long hours and you're not there for your kids, it's guilt is awful on you. The loneliness is awful on them. But at this point in time, I don't have any other options. As a mum, we're doing the best that we can just to stay above water. So understanding the compassion that comes with this as well, and how, if this is my reality, how we can grow those connections in the meantime. Number 5 can be identity and self-esteem issues. So parental separation can trigger anxiety and identity and self-esteem issues in children. So there's this beautiful saying that I love, If a child experiences emotional abuse from a parent, they don't stop loving the parent, they stop loving themselves. So they may grapple with questions about their own identity. What have I done wrong? Was this my fault? And that's extremely normal, especially when it comes to the dysregulation chart and how we go into flight, fight, freeze mode. So when a child can potentially go through this, when you have the capacity emotionally, physically, psychologically to understand that it's hard on you, get yourself right first and then help the babies, okay? This pressure is then experienced by our children and sometimes expecting to grow up faster than what they should. So there's also another term called adultification. Adultification. I find that very difficult to say. I'm dyslexic. A lot of words I find very difficult to say. Adultification. And that essentially means, I'm pretty sure you can guess, when the parent treats the child as an adult, exposing them to all adult information as opposed to protecting them and buffering them, letting them be a child. So sometimes when we accidentally have adultification, the parent expects their child to take on adult roles or even the parental role of looking after their younger siblings. And this is very, very common if, just say you've got children, so just say you've got 4 kids, but the eldest is a girl. It's a lot of responsibility for the eldest girl to then become that mother role and look after the other children. And the other youngest children can still be children, but the eldest, who's a female, those gender roles, has to then replace and be the parent and be the mother, which is very difficult for everyone. And when this happens, the parent is unable to soothe themselves, so then they require the children to take on the parent role and comfort them when they are distressed, worried, or suffering. This is called parentification. When the parent is unable to soothe themselves or they're not dealing very well, they're overly dependent on the child to be that emotional support for them. And so the child then sacrifices their own needs to be the rock for the parent. Then there are the opposite extremes. Infantization. Have you heard this word before? Infantization. So the parent essentially treats the child as an infant. I don't want to let them go. I don't want them to leave me. It's that suffocation. Let me be your baby. I want to do everything for you. No, let me, do you know? There's no autonomy, and they obsess, so the child is dependent and unable to do anything themselves. So just those 3: adultification, parentification, and infantization. This is a hard day for me, isn't it? Okay. So we're trying to maintain a healthy relationship for all parties is obviously the best outcome for our children to make sense of all of this and everything that's going on. But it's also good for me to say these things to you because if your partner's doing it to the children, understanding the greater perspective to see how my child's reacting and potentially ways to overcompensate, educate, support in some way, okay? And obviously, with any separation, the goal is cooperative parenting. So cooperative parenting looks like low levels of conflict. There's always going to be conflict. Low levels of conflict. Parents, they can put their differences aside to prioritize the needs of their children. So this is the best long-term outcome for kids. There is this thing called parallel parenting. Parallel parenting isn't as hard as parallel parking, okay? Parents create parallel homes for their children to move between, same rules, same boundaries, same routines, and the kids can generally cope well moving between the 2 homes because it's consistent and everyone's on the same page. Children commonly struggle with the inconsistency of rules and bickering because it would suck if I go to one house and I'm allowed to do this and I'm relaxed, and then I go to this other house, geez, I'm not allowed to do that again. And it's just confusing. It can be overwhelming, and especially if one of the reasons as to the separation is we could never get on the same page. It exacerbates after separation. Okay. There's a thing called mixed parenting. So parents have little to no interactions with each other, but when they do, it's arguing and conflict. So this is a crazy generalization, okay? Don't take this as Bible, but this is a generalization. The reason mixed parenting generally happens with fathers if they feel like they're pushed out. When they have little to no interactions with their kids, it's every second weekend. And then just say they have little boys and they feel they need to teach the boy a lesson or keep him in line. And so when they have the boy that every second weekend, it's arguing, conflict, discipline. So every second weekend, the kid doesn't want to go back and see his dad because it's just negative. Mixed parenting. This leaves our kids to feel uncertain and always walking on eggshells and anxious because of the inevitable. So a little boy gets their self-esteem from their dad. And then next, there is parental alienation. So one parent essentially corrupts the child's sense of reality. So one parent coerces the child to believe that the other parent does not want them or love them. Or they're not here on time. It means they don't love you. Oh, they didn't get you that. Yeah, they're busy doing stuff without you. They're so happy without you. I'm the only one that loves you. Parental alienation. It seems so harsh, okay? But just for a moment, there are actually 3 types of alienators. Who would have thought, right? Sometimes people are literally hearing this for the first time. They know what the other's doing, but there's not a word or label for it. And now when you can understand what's happening, it gives you that sense of control about what's happening, okay? The first type of alienators is naive. So even though they may occasionally engage in typical alienating behavior, ultimately, they do not acknowledge the importance of the relationship with the other parent, okay? Next is active alienators. So when they feel hurt, they will strategically isolate the child. So when they feel hurt, they want to hurt the parent and then they use the children, okay? They tend to express guilt after when they realize the extent of their damage, what they've done. So at least there's a little bit of remorse. And sometimes if you do feel guilt and remorse, it can lead to long-term behavior if they can see what happens or how the children's dealing with it. Okay, number 3, ladies, obsessed alienators, okay? They want to punish their partner for the pain separation has caused them. They have little self-control, little awareness into their own behavior, and I'm pretty sure this is one of the reasons why you left. They are focused on getting back at someone rather than moving forward. So they're always in victim mentality. I'm going to hurt you because you hurt me. I'm going to awful, awful, awful. But at least if you can understand, we can then get knowledge and power and mentally strong, okay? You can't change someone if they're not willing to change, but we have to work on ourselves to move forward and then understand that empowerment, how we can do that for our kids. So unfortunately, in high conflict situations during a separation, some parents may engage in additional negative tactics that can harm the children in an attempt to retaliate against the other parent. So we've mentioned a few. Let's have a look at another couple. And understanding that these behaviors are not only detrimental to the children's well-being, but can also have long-term psychological effects. One of them is using children as pawns. So even the things that we've just mentioned, using the children as pawns for tools for emotional manipulation or as means to gain leverage in illegal or personal disputes. This might even involve restricting access to visitation, making false accusations, or even using the children to deliver messages back and forth or gather information about the other parent. Where were they? What were they doing? Who were they with? Are they with someone? Where did they? No. Another one is undermining the other parent's authority. So some parents may intentionally undermine the authority and decisions of the other parent, leading to confusion and instability to the children's lives. So this can include rules, contradicting rules within families, disregarding agreements, or intentionally disrupting routines set by the other parent. There's another one, neglecting the children's needs. So in some cases, parents might be so focused on their own conflicts that they neglect the basic emotional and physical needs of their own children. So this can include inadequate supervision, lack of attention, or even basic failure to address the children's emotional needs during a challenging time. And then when the kid acts out, or rebels, or sulks, or whatever it is, then that awful cycle continues. And then there's also legal maneuvering to gain control. So parents may even engage in excessive legal battles, not necessarily for the well-being of the children, but as a means of gaining control or seeking revenge against the other parent. And these can be expensive, lengthy legal disputes, which can be emotional draining, obviously, for all parties, and burdensome. So it can be awful. And obviously it is crucial for both parents to prioritise the well-being of their children during a separation and actively seek ways to co-parent effectively. Because if you can understand from the greater picture everything that I've just been talking about and how hurt people. And some of these things can be learnt behaviours from their parents or from people around them. Some of them can be mental illness or personality disorders. Some of them can also just be because they're so dysregulated, they're not in the present, they're not thinking clearly, and they're completely in victim mentality. So obviously professional mediation where you can, so this includes counselling, legal advice, can be a huge valuable resource to help navigating these challenging situations. And especially through this, learning how to be mentally strong, how to not give up, how to not give in, and how to be authentic to yourself. And especially it can be difficult if this might not even be you, but you're watching this. All of this makes sense with your friend or with your own siblings, or even with your parents, if your parents are a bit older and they've separated. It's very interesting, and understanding if we can get back our strength and our power, put our priorities back on the children, we can't do that unless we have ourselves right. So the priority is always getting ourselves right first, as best we can, and also acknowledging all of our struggles, everything that's happening, okay? You are very important, and you are very, very special, and your children really, really need you, and they need you at your best. There's always this thing that you will die for your kids, but will you live for them every day? Will you be there for them? Will you make positive choices for yourself? Good diet, good exercise, fresh air, good relationships, positive around you, positive choices. Not toxic positivity, because that doesn't work and that's not sustainable. But actively making choices to make my life better. Moral of the story: children need to be loved and protected. They don't need to be brought into the chaos of adult separations. You're an adult, they are children. Yes, obviously it's easier said than done, especially when hurt feelings are involved. Our expectations have been destroyed, and this isn't where I thought I would be at this point in my life. It's very difficult. If you need help, speak with someone. Educate yourself. Understand anxiety, as well as the grief and loss cycle after separations. We always think grief and loss is just when it comes to a death, but grief and loss impacts us and affects us all the time. I've got an episode about it previously. I'll put it in the show notes. You want your kids to grow into adults who respect you for your decisions, not because we have bullied them into loyalty. So thank you so much for joining me today. If this is currently happening to you or you're experiencing it, this can be very overwhelming and triggering. And sometimes I didn't realize these things are happening and now it's abundantly clear. So just let all of this marinate for a moment. Be very careful with yourself. Do some kind of self-care. So there's a thing called triggers that we all know of. There's also another thing called glimmers. And glimmers are the little things, but when we get triggered by things, it's automatic and it's upsetting and we can generally tend to overreact. We need to then balance all of that out with glimmers. And glimmers are those beautiful things during the day that make me feel happy and warm, such as when I have a cup of tea and it's still warm when I drink it instead of being cold. I get to work on time instead of being late because of the kids. Another beautiful glimmer is succeeding and staying within my budget for the week, and I'm proud of myself. Another glimmer is I've actively taking the time to send my friends messages or phone calls or something to connect so I don't feel isolated. Another glimmer is giving my kids a cuddle and feeling their warmth and telling them I'm proud of them, even when they haven't done anything. You know, you're very, very lucky to be mums, and our kids are very, very lucky to have you. So have a wonderful day. I'll stop talking. I'm obviously very passionate, and I will speak with everyone soon. Thank you so much for your time. Bye.
If you're hearing this message, you've listened to the entire episode, and for that, I want to thank you for your support. It takes me hours to research and create this for you, so I genuinely hope you enjoyed it and felt more mentally strong. If you did find my information useful, please leave a review and subscribe. By leaving a review, it's a value exchange. It's good karma. I value your support just as much as you value my free information. So please find me on Instagram or Facebook by searching Mentally Strong Mums with MUMS, and find heaps of free resources online at my private practice website, www.supportivetherapy.com.au. And even if you want to book a session with me, I would love that. This podcast is for you, so let me know what topics you would like to see covered in future episodes. And if you yourself are a professional or working with mums and would like to be a guest, I would love to support you. So please message me on Instagram. Thank you again for your time. Have a wonderful day, you beautiful mum.